Hey everyone, welcome back. Another episode. Woohoo! We have on a guest today, Sarah Intelligator, and we are talking about holistic divorce. I'm so inspired by this topic. I think this could be helpful for a lot of people. I know often we're thinking around okay, how do we keep this relationship going? How do we keep things going and whatnot, get over our hurdles, get over our challenges. And sometimes there is the reality that people come to the decision to separate. And there are some healthy ways to go about that and some not so healthy ways to go about that, let's be honest. And so when Sarah reached out to be a guest on the podcast, I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's bring this fresh perspective to the show today. So a little bit about Sarah. Sarah graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's in arts and English, and she received the Juris Doctorate from Southwestern Law School in Los Angeles. So she's practiced exclusively with family law since 2008, and Sarah is the owner and founder of law offices of Sarah A. Intelligator, PC. And Sarah has also been a yoga instructor since the year of 2000. So, combining her gift with healing and her skills as a litigator, Sarah organically bridged the two worlds and really coining this term holistic divorce and family law to describe her style of practice and devoting just as much attention to fighting for her clients as she does to honoring the human experiences. Instructively linked to family law and litigation, Sarah committed herself to improving the lives of her clients. And so we're going to have a conversation today with Sarah around just her journey, how she got into this healing and divorce world, and again, this concept, this idea of holistic divorce. And Sarah also has recently published a book that we'll get into as well. So, anyways, continue listening on if this topic interests you, and let's hear what you think about it. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I'm loving your little stand of books there behind you. I know we're going to get talking into that, but you have such a unique journey. We were talking about the concept of holistic divorce, and I'd love to just hear from you just a little bit of how you made that transition into the healing with the legal world.
Yeah, well, I was actually a yoga teacher before I was an attorney for many, many, many years. And when I went out onto my own, I worked for a firm at first for the first 5 years of my practice. But when I decided to go out onto my own and start my own practice, I kind of gave a lot of thought to what set me apart from the other attorneys in my field. There are so many family law attorneys, especially in Los Angeles. What makes me different? Why would somebody want to come to me versus them? And it just came to me one day. I was like, the way that I practice law already is very informed by the way that I teach yoga, or, pretty much the fact that I have been a yoga teacher for so long, and that's such a part of who I am. And so it kind of came to me very organically that my goal, obviously, I have to zealously represent my clients. I have to perform all my ethical obligations to them, as I'm required to do. But I felt like family law was so deeply personal, and it involved so much more, like it was so real. Like you're dealing with real people at a time when they're most vulnerable, and they're placing all their trust in a complete stranger. And to me, I had a lot of respect for that, especially having gone through my own divorce. So I had a lot more empathy toward the process and the emotional implications of divorce. So I kind of thought, well, if I could kind of guide people and help them in the way that I guide my yoga students through difficult situations on the mat or in the yoga studio, if I could do that for my clients who are going through this difficult time, there are a lot of parallels there. And so I came up with the term holistic divorce and family law just to kind of describe the way that I practice and how I bring those unique elements into my style of practice.
Mhm. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the term conscious uncoupling
Yeah.
to it doesn't have to be this space of I'm out to get you for everything you have and I want to ruin your life, right? Or even the interpersonal challenges that we face or that people rather face when going through divorce. And especially if there's kids involved. And so I love that. So with your clients, are you I guess what does a session look like with you, or what does a meeting look like with you when people are using you for the law side of things?
Well, it sort of depends. It depends what the needs are. I mean, usually I think in the context of an initial consultation, when people first come to me, they've made the difficult decision to get a divorce or they've been served with divorce papers. So they sit down with me and they never thought that they would ever set foot in an attorney's office a day in their lives. They've never had to deal with an attorney. It can be quite intimidating. And a lot of I mean, most people start crying because it is really emotional. You're kind of making this realization that your relationship that you thought was till death do you part is now over.
Mhm.
And you're dealing with a breakup, but you're also going to be tasked with making a lot of financial decisions and dealing with child custody issues potentially. So there are a lot of emotions coming up, and people are always so apologetic when they start crying. And I'm like, no, no, please, 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 God, let it out. This is part of the process. And if you didn't do this, you wouldn't be human, sort of thing. So my job is at that point to really be a good listener. Like I'm supposed to give them information because I think that a lot of people are so intimidated by the divorce process. They know nothing about it. There's this fear of the unknown. And so for me, if I can spend that hour with them and demystify all of the fears and the unknowns for them, then they leave feeling a lot more empowered and a lot less scared. So there's that component. But also, if I can be there for them just to offer some comfort, um, share stories, share anecdotes, share my own personal experience even with them. I have no problem creating that rapport with them and being an open book and sharing my personal story, but just reminding them that I've never had a single client who has been in a worse situation when they left my office than they were when they started, and how it always is so daunting when you're standing at the bottom of the mountain looking up. But when you're on the other side of it, at the bottom of the hill, people are always much happier and so relieved and feel like a weight has been lifted. So it's kind of a real honor to guide people through that journey and to be part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just imagine like the framework that you're offering them is like really also that scope of a friend. Like you're really truly giving them that space to feel. It's more than just like the there pat on the back or like the awkward push of the tissue box. It's like you're actually giving them space to feel and you're honoring those emotions that are coming up for them.
Yeah, it's important because I understand that it is a journey and it is a healing process, and it's a very difficult journey. And so to me, if I can offer something to provide comfort or to ease their kind of sadness or fear, whatever it is, I would love to do that. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and for you and your practice, are you primarily working with just one of the partners in the relationship, or are you serving both of them? What is the dynamic usually for you?
So that would be a conflict of interest, actually, for me to represent both parties. I can be a neutral third party mediator to both parties where I try to help them reach a resolution. But in those situations, I'm not really offering comfort to any one person because I have to maintain my neutrality. But really, I'm only dealing with one party.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. As soon as you said that, I was like, duh, Rachel.
No, that's okay. It shouldn't be readily apparent to someone who isn't. I have people calling me all the time saying, "Oh, things are totally amicable. Can you represent both of us?" And I'm like, "Well, I would love to, but no, it would still be a conflict." So,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So you wrote a book on this. So live, laugh, find true love, backward lessons from divorce. I'm assuming that's all the books there stacked behind you.
yes,
I'd
some of
love to get into,
them.
like why did you choose to write this book and who is it for exactly?
So I wrote this book because I only have the opportunity to get to people when they are already at my office, when it's already too late. Um, I watch how difficult, expensive, emotionally deleterious divorce can be, how it impacts children, most importantly to me. And if I could prevent people from getting a divorce by showing them what people do wrong and why they end up in my office, and then telling them, don't do that, do this instead. And then guiding them to finding the right relationship so they never need me. It's bad for business, but I'm okay with that. then that was kind of the impetus for it. It's sort of part of this holistic approach that I have, except it sort of meandered beyond just the divorce attorney space. And it was like, well, if I can kind of look at relationships holistically, how do I prevent people from getting a divorce and finding a meaningful and fulfilling lifelong relationship? So that was sort of the impetus for it. And then I'm sorry, what was your second question?
Yeah, well, you covered I think both. Like the second part,
Okay.
who is it? Who is for?
Okay, yeah.
And so yeah, people. I'm assuming people that are maybe well, one want to keep their relationship happy and healthy and thriving and all of that, or two, maybe somebody that is like in those beginning stages of feeling rocky, or even maybe the end stages, like giving them like there's still hope, there's still changes that if you're both willing to like take that radical ownership and making those changes to move forward, like this, you don't have to, like you said, like land in my office.
Yeah, and I think actually the book is for everyone. I think if you're in a relationship, there's some really powerful self-reflection tools that could help strengthen the relationship. But I also think that the book is really geared toward people who are single and looking to be in the right relationship, people who are in a relationship and deciding whether or not it is ultimately something that is destined for marriage or should be destined for marriage or, lifelong partnership. And especially, I think for people who have gone through a divorce and are looking for a second, they're ready to do it all over again. I think there are a lot of things in there that help people reflect upon maybe the decisions that they made that led to their first relationship and maybe how they can do things differently the second time around.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And so yeah, thank you for saying that. Like yeah, and when you say it in that regard, it makes sense that it would be for everybody, especially if you're covering I want to get to this next, like you have your F words, and it's so funny. And my tagline for so long has been foreplay is my favorite F word, but you have a whole different host of F words that
Different F words. Yep.
I'd love to kind of walk through like what these F words are that you identify and why they matter so much.
Yeah. So I came up with six F words and that kind of short for fail factors. The things, they're patterns that I see in pretty much all of the people who walk through my door. Among those relationships that fail, these are kind of the reasons that they fail. So, the first one is fundamental values. I list it, the rest are kind of in no particular order. I list fundamental values first, though, because I do think that it's sort of indispensable. I think that without that, you can't even proceed to the other F words. Fundamental values is really, do you and your partner, are you aligned on things that are really fundamental, like really they define you, they are who you are at your core. They're not just superficial things like, oh, we have so much in common because we both love taking long bike rides on the beach, or we both like punk music or whatever it is. Those things are not the glue that you need to hold the relationship together throughout the course of a lifetime. But shared fundamental values are sort of indicative of how you're going to navigate life. And so if you have similar fundamental values, you are going to likely navigate life in a very similar way and therefore be aligned as you go along the way instead of being at odds with one another. So that's why that's so important. And I think that most people don't, they might know what they value, but they don't actually take a step back to think about it and to identify for themselves what their own fundamental values are. So then they kind of go through dating without looking for someone who shares those fundamental values. It's not like deliberate.
Mhm.
So I can go on to the other F words, but I don't know if you want me to do that or if you want to ask me any questions about that or.
Yeah, I think I really like that so you're starting with this one. This to me is like really the foundation of the pyramid and keeping it whole. I agree with you there. So what if you're thinking through about values, like would you be able to name some that people, because I think people, yeah, might just offering more clarity on like what is somebody's value specifically.
Sure. I think family is one of them. Like, is it really important to you to be super close to your family? Are you super close to your family? Um, Religion. politics or, political ideations. I hear this one a lot is like veganism. I know that's kind of like a very niche thing, but there are vegans who are fine dating non-vegans and they're like, well, I do what I want, everyone else can do what they want. But there are like militant vegans who are like, I could not possibly be with someone who is willing to eat an animal. So like that could be a fundamental value. It doesn't necessarily need to be. Um, a sense of adventure and kind of open-mindedness.
Mhm.
There's so many. We kind of have to look at back at our lives almost to figure out what has driven us. And I think a lot of times we mistake superficial things for fundamental values. Like a great example that I love to give is like someone who's in her 20s. And she loves to backpack through Europe and travel extensively and is just so into adventure and kind of living in the moment. And that doesn't necessarily mean that eventually, when she has kids and settles down, she's going to be able to travel like that.
Mhm.
So maybe the travel itself isn't the fundamental value, but what was kind of giving her the impetus, what was driving her to travel.
Mhm.
There's this underlying sense of adventure and need for adventure.
Mhm.
And so she might not be able to travel as much once she has kids, but she might seek adventure in other ways. And a partner who is maybe a homebody and doesn't really like really a homebody that might not align with her fundamental values and she'll be unhappy and she might resent that partner and that partner might resent her for forcing him or her out of their comfort zone. So it really sometimes you have to look at, well, is this sustainable? It might not be the actual fundamental value, but what is underlying that love, that passion?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's a good. It's you're really getting like that depth to the conversation and the depth to the values. It reminds me too. I lead like partners through something called the emotional needs assessment, and that some of the things that you mentioned are on there. Like how much is this a need to you? Like recreational activity is on there, sexual fulfillment, respect and admiration, physical attractiveness. Like how much are these a need for you in your relationship? And for both partners to do that, it's like, yeah, like where do we match and where could we maybe do some a little bit more work on, or coming to say like I maybe can't meet this need fully to you to the extent that I would like to or that you need me to. And I like that you said that, like the example that you gave of the woman in her 20s, needing that adventure. Like she might get that adventure from other aspects of life, not necessarily in partnership. Or you mentioned like once she has kids, adventure is going to obviously look very different there. But again, that core needing adventure, needing, yeah, like, I'm trying to think of a synonym for adventure and I can't think of it. Exploration,
Yeah.
maybe, you know.
Yeah, just I think it's like open-mindedness, maybe
Mhm.
even because somebody who is really open to new experiences and craves them really
Yeah.
is not necessarily right for somebody who's closed off to them. They want just comfort and routine, and that could be, you know, it could just lead both of them to ultimately resent one another because they are forcing the other out of a comfort zone in a way that the other doesn't want to be forced out of that comfort zone.
Mhm. So this is, yeah, totally off script here, but what's coming up for
Yeah.
me? Like what do you think about the phrase opposites attract?
You know, I think that there can be some validity to that. I don't, when I say like bringing each other out of your comfort zone, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I think that um, people can bring different things to the relationship and expose each other to different things and open each other's eyes to new experiences. I think that's great. I think that's how we enhance one another in relationships. My parents are a great example of that. I think that they're such opposites in so many ways. Like, my dad is really into like really weird movies and cool music, and my mom is fine just with rom-coms and she's not into any of that stuff. But I think that those are very superficial things. And I think that they have exposed each other over the years to many different things from their different worlds. But ultimately, they at their core kind of value the same thing. So I think that if those opposite things are really superficial and it's more about exposure, that's cool. But I think that if the core values don't align and they're really antithetical in that regard, I don't necessarily think the opposites will attract.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe initially, because maybe we're attracted to something or like fetishize something that's different, but that's not necessarily sustainable.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I agree fully. And I think too, like a common conversation I'm having with clients is like in the beginning of the relationship, all of those happy hormones are firing, right? It's like shiny new thing syndrome, but biologically those hormones decrease over time. And so, yeah, I'm glad again, I know we're getting really in depth here with the fundamental values. This is so important. Like I'm so glad that
Yeah.
in the book and that
Yeah.
body of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually one of my other F words is like when you say shiny new things, this is um, is sort of this fairy tale
Mhm.
that well, I guess fairy tale is one of them. It's not really fairy tale. I don't think the shiny new things. Um, I think it still goes with fundamental values actually, because I think that when I talk about fundamental values, one of the things that I suggest, and there's an exercise in my book, is first you ascertain your own fundamental values, and then you come up with a list of questions that you want to ask to ascertain whether this other person shares those fundamental values. And it doesn't mean you walk into your date with a clipboard and ask a list of questions and make it really sterile. But these are things that if you know the questions, then in the back of your mind, you could kind of be sprinkling them into the conversation, maybe first date, maybe second date, maybe third date, because the longer you go, the more invested you get, the more difficult it is to then back out and hit the eject button. And that's when we get stuck in relationships because we haven't done our due diligence off the bat. And then we are afraid, which is another F word, fear, to leave the relationship because we're afraid maybe we won't find somebody else, or maybe we're afraid to be alone, or maybe we're getting older, biological clock is ticking. I need to get on with the show, where so fear kind of really creeps in here. And so we're so enamored in the beginning of a relationship. They're the butterflies in our stomach and the hormones, as you said, and that sort of divorces us from our intellect. And we cannot make good decisions when our hormones are driving the car. We need to take the wheel and let our brain and our intellect and our intuition and all these. I can't tell you how many clients I have come into my office who tell me that they saw the red flags. They knew it wasn't the right relationship. They all know, everyone knows there's an intuition, and we silence it because we're afraid. We're afraid that if we listen, then we have to do the scary and uncomfortable thing and end the relationship. But to me, it's a lot scarier to get divorced 10, 15, 20 years down the road when you have children. Even just get divorced at all, even if you don't have children and you've only been married for 2 years, it's still it takes such a toll that that's way scarier. But we're not thinking about that because we don't have an understanding of what that feels like or what that means. So we just deal with like the me of right now, and then that's a me later problem, sort of. We like kind of dismiss it and say something that I'll have to deal with later on down the road, and like don't think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have the fear, the fairy tale, the fundamental values. What are some of these other F words? I know them, but I don't want to like spoil the surprise.
Okay, yeah, yeah, here you go. Okay, so family is one of them, which I sort of touched upon as a fundamental value, but I think that family, even if it's not a fundamental value necessarily, can be very indicative of what a person's issues may be, who a person is. Families offer a sneak peek sort of into the person. Like if someone's not talking to his mom, and he then seeks out a partner who is going to fill that void, because that place where the void that his mom left in his soul needs to be filled. So he seeks out a partner who's maternal,
Mhm.
who maybe like kind of stands in the role of a mother, and that's not necessarily the right partner for that person. They're going to have a really weird dynamic in their relationship. I don't think anyone wants to be someone's mommy in a relationship, right? So that sort of like or if someone's really close to their family and their family doesn't like you or you don't like their family, that's going to create problems down the road. So, like, family in so many different ways is really important. So that's another one. And then fixing is another one, which is kind of a two-parter. So fixing can be trying to fix someone else. Like, you're not going to fix someone else. Your partner is not a project. If your partner wants to work on himself or herself, great, love it. But it's not your job, nor are you going to be the one to fix this person. And you shouldn't be going after somebody who needs to be fixed. And that doesn't mean that we don't all have like our issues and our own experiences and our own traumas going into a relationship. That is true of everyone. But if somebody is having a lot of issues because they haven't addressed those traumas or those experiences, then they are not a project. They need to deal with that and work on it. And they could be the best person in the world, the most attractive person in the world. No, red flag. Go away from that. Like, back off. And then the other thing is fixing yourself. You need to be healthy when you enter a relationship. Otherwise, you're going to seek out an unhealthy relationship. And if you're healthy, then you're going to seek out a healthy relationship. So if you have experiences or traumas or issues that you have not addressed, your relationship is not going to fix you. And just like in that example I gave of the guy who's not speaking to his mom, if that is causing you to seek out a partner who fills that void because you want a mommy to fill that void, then you need to address the feelings and the issues and the trauma that not speaking to your mother have brought up for you so that you can find the right partner for you and not like your traumas and your issues choosing a partner for you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, all valid points. And I think like especially within partnership, like our partners can be such a great mirror for us too, as you're speaking, like yes, historically like being your healthiest best self and getting into a relationship is ideal, but there's probably a lot of people listening that didn't take that route, right? So I would just kind of want to giving them hope of like this doesn't mean that it's over, you're right, you're doom and gloom by any means, but your partner can be such a great reflection of like maybe some of those internal things that you could work on and that you do have opportunity to grow and heal from.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Super.
and then the last F word is foundation, which I liken to the foundation of a house. If a house doesn't have a solid foundation, the house is going to fall down. If you don't have a solid relationship, your relationship's going to fall down. And so I break it down into 5 pillars that support the foundation of the relationship. And they're pretty self-explanatory, are respect, teamwork, communication, honesty, and trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This sounds like again, you're as we're talking more about this, like definitely a book that many people could benefit from. And I'm curious, like for you, which F word do you think are the most overlooked for people, if any?
Fundamental values, just I keep coming back to that. It's the most important and it's probably one of the most overlooked. I don't think people take the time to reflect upon their own fundamental values and then really actively look for a partner who shares those fundamental values. They might just kind of by happenstance end up sharing some fundamental values because we gravitate toward people who are similar. But it's not something that's done as actively as I think it should be, that we don't take the time to ascertain whether this person shares those fundamental values. We like hook up with somebody on a first, second date, whatever, and then we're now invested emotionally, physically,
Mhm.
and we then kind of, which is fine. There's no judgment on that, but then we don't take the time to ascertain the information we need, and then we're just kind of so enamored and in love and infatuated that we don't then do the work that we need to do. So I think that's a big one. And I think fear is just, I think it causes people to stay in relationships that they shouldn't. It causes them to justify relationships that shouldn't be justified. Like, well, like they intuitively know a relationship's wrong, but they just are trying to convince themselves. Because then, if they admit that it's wrong, they have to go back out there into the horrible dating world and get back on the apps or whatever they're doing, and they hate it and they don't want to deal with it. So it's easier to justify why it's right, but it's sort of like a delayed gratification thing. So I think do the work now to avoid the grief later.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, it's like it's really taking your relationship beyond surface level and really getting some depth into it, and that is going to require having some hard conversations, like facing some fears, sharing some fears with your partner, so that you can really co-create this life together and this but marriage or potential marriage that feels good and feels like aligned for the both of you.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you kind of just alluded to this, but what would you say are some of the biggest red flags that you see that people are ignoring or couples are ignoring?
There's so many. Um, you know, one of the biggest ones I think is in a male and female heterosexual relationship where the male is the more like dominant one in the relationship, meaning he's maybe the breadwinner, he's employed, he's, sometimes maybe a narcissist. I don't like to overuse that word, but maybe a narcissist. And um, there are kind of little glimpses into that where he's controlling or sort of puts the woman down in some ways, but she's okay with it because ultimately he's really charming and flattering and he provides comfort, a sense of comfort for her.
Mhm.
And I think that that plays out terribly in a marriage. Not to say that stay-at-home wife or mom and the man who goes to work is a bad dynamic. I think actually it's a really great dynamic in many cases. But there are some cases where I see that where it's so obvious that the guy is just kind of he wants to be the dominant one in the relationship. And I think that there are male and female roles in a relationship, but that ultimately a relationship is a team, it's a partnership. And if one feels dominant or superior to the other, that I don't know if we can have that equity and that partnership and that teamwork.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Again, I could just keep coming back to that word co-creating, like co-creating like something that feels aligned for the both of you. Yeah, there's the things that you named in there too of like some work that a person could also do individually to making sure that their partner is the right fit for them. And so what advice would you give to somebody maybe that is afraid of leaving a relationship that they know is the wrong relationship for them?
That person is probably afraid that they're not going to find somebody else or find somebody as good. And I can tell you from personal experience, I can also tell you from watching my clients, um, friends, that it is true what they say. There are plenty of fish in the sea. I think that there is somebody out there for everybody, and there's somebody right for everybody. And it just takes time and patience and having a sense of self-worth to know that you're worth better than wrong. You're better. It's better to be single than to be with the wrong person because you deserve to be with the right person. You deserve to love and be loved in the right way and in a healthy way. And so, even though that is a scary thought, the being alone, the never finding someone, um, there you will find the right person if you change your mindset. Because I think thinking that you're never going to find someone else and being afraid to leave a relationship that you know is wrong is selling yourself way short and saying to yourself you're not good enough. And it might be a signal to you to work on your self-esteem and know that you deserve better than that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I have a great follow-up episode that I want to suggest here for anybody that just resonated with. I have, oh my gosh, I'm not going to remember the name of the guest that I had on the show, and I feel so badly for that. But go back into the previous episodes and look up tapping for relationships. The guest that I had on brought in EFT tapping for essentially attracting the right partner, and it works a lot on what you were just saying around like self-esteem, and
That's so cool.
clarity on what you're, yeah, what you're wanting. Um, Yeah, so anyways, I had to plug that in, and yeah, and I hope that this episode too, we've had just a lot of good like aha moments with this that I think listeners are really gonna like. And again, your book is a great resource for people. But if somebody was wanting to maybe reach out to you, follow you on Instagram, where would somebody find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram at sarah.a.intelligator.esq or my website, which is lafamilylawpractice.com.
Perfect. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you were really dying to share on the show today?
I think we covered so much in such a short amount of time. I'm kind of impressed with us right now.
Fast talker, I think that helps. No, but thank you. Yeah, Sarah, this was really good. Thank you for just again bringing this concept and like this framework of the lens through this conversation around divorce. And I hope like really combated some fears that might be coming up with people around like there is possibility of grass actually being greener on the other side is what you're getting at here. And especially
Yeah.
not in that relationship that you know is not fully serving you and your values, like that is okay. You're not a failure, you're not wrong, you're not broken by any means if that relationship comes to an end.
No, for sure. And I mean, this is something I say in the book, but you know, it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. But the thing about the needle in the haystack is it's there. And it might be hard to find, but if you look hard enough, and it's worth finding, if you look hard enough, you will find it. It is there. So don't get dejected or demoralized just because you aren't finding it right away. It's a difficult thing to find, but you will find it.
Mhm. Yeah, so just having some patience with yourself and again going back to what you said of knowing your worth and knowing that you're worthy of being loved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks.